I'm going to get into why you should start a service-based business. So, number one, it's easy to start. All you need is a phone, an internet connection, and maybe a designation. For some businesses like programming or shoveling driveways, you don't need anything. Okay. Number two, you risk your time, not your money. For you young guys, you probably don't even have the money to risk. For you older guys, if you're my age, 30, if you're 33 and you're trying to get out of the workforce, you might have been saving for 10 years. You can't afford to lose that money, okay? Cannot afford that. If you saved 30 grand or 35 grand, 40 grand, you can't afford to dump that in a business that fails. Okay, that's going to put you back in the job market for the next 4 or 5 years doing something you hate. Okay, the majority of guys, I'd much rather see you risking your time than your money. Number three, it's realistic. Okay, this is not a Tony Robbins seminar. This is not become a billionaire. This is doing real shit that makes money in the real world. Okay, being a billionaire, never gonna happen. Okay, period. Being a multimillionaire, that's gonna be real tough. Real tough, guys. For most of you to make that happen, it's going to take 20 years of consistent work if you can do it. And I'm talking about a cash multimillionaire. You know, you've got the millions in cash. It's not tied up in debt or real estate and stuff like that. That can be done. That's on the higher end of probabilities. But that's real tough. Okay. I want to give you something that's realistic. Okay, a service-based business is realistic. It's realistic to drop down in the middle of nowhere in a service-based business and do 45, 50K in year one, 70K in year two, 100K in year three, 10 years in, be doing 250, 300K if you've really been working at it. That's realistic, okay? I knew a guy back in Toronto in his late 30s who was doing 500-600K in real estate. At New York, real estate broker, one of the top guys, I'm sure they're doing 7 figures. I'm sure they're doing $1 million a year, maybe more. This is a realistic way to make good, consistent money. Okay. Number 4, you can run it on the side. You can start any service-based business while you're working a job, and you don't have to leave that job until you get your first customer. Now, some businesses are going to be tougher to get a sale than others. I mean, you can get your first asphalt paving customer or your first web design customer or your first programming customer probably relatively quickly. To close a real estate deal where you make 20 grand, you might not get a deal in a whole year if you're just doing it part-time. You might get 2, but you might go a whole year without it. So those real estate, insurance, that might be tougher to do, but a lot of other service-based businesses, you can start making money on the side. My friend runs a car brokerage business on top of his 9-to-5 job, and he makes like $1,000 to $2,000 a month on top of his natural income. Okay, so it's something where you can dip your foot in the water before you jump in all the way. Make sure that you have customers, make sure you get in the hang of the business, make sure that you like it, make sure you got money coming in, and then you can quit your job and go full tilt 100% on your service-based business. Number 5, you know you have a market. In my tech startup, it took us 1.5 years to market. It took 70 grand of my partner's money primarily, and to get to the point where we found out we didn't have customers. The best we could do was break even, despite all the financial voodoo that we went at it with. The best we could do was pay for our advertising costs. We're selling product, but we're not covering the Google AdWords and the marketing campaigns and this and that. So that's a very expensive lesson. Luckily, it wasn't my money, but no market. When you're trying to reinvent the wheel, you don't know whether you have a market. Okay. I didn't write my first book on RLD until 3 years in, until I built an audience where I felt it was a profitable enough use of my time to write a book. And I have a market, but that was a gamble. Okay, I could have written a book and no one bought it. So with a service-based business, you know you have a market if you've chosen correctly. Okay, if you've chosen real estate, if you've chosen programming, if you've chosen web design, if you've chosen selling insurance, you know, a market that's already very big, a market that's already been mapped out, you know you have that. Okay, so you don't have to worry about doing this thing and having no one buy from you. Number 6, you have no employees. Every survey studied on business shows that 90% of your stress and 90% of your time as a business owner is going to go towards managing employees. The average person is lazy, dishonest. They're going to try and work as little as possible. I can't tell you how happy I am not to have colleagues or not to have any people to manage in my business. The amount of stress and headaches times 10 on employees. And if you want to go on vacation, you know, as an independent guy, you can do that. When you've got employees, you can try and go away for vacation for 2 weeks, but the shit might fall apart while you're gone. Okay, that's a major advantage, not having anyone to deal with. You know, just people are fucking lazy and annoying, guys. Okay, and anyone who's working a job past 30 is not, and not trying to start their own thing, is not going to be a high performer for the most part. Okay, and finally, number 7, you've got huge margins. As the Donald would say, they're huge. You've got huge margins. Okay, your margins in a service-based business are, you know, nearly as good as drug dealing. Okay, the only thing higher is digital products. My digital projects and my margins for blogging are massive. But that's after 3 years. That's 175,000 visitors a month. And those, you know, I read an ebook, cost me about $500 to market, and I made that back, you know, within a day. But other than like digital products, selling arms, oil, not even oil, selling arms and selling drugs, your margins in a service-based business are going to be massive. Okay, my friend, the car broker, put maybe 5,000 into his business in his first year and got 40,000 back. You're talking about 700% return on your investment. You can't get that anywhere. Okay, forget about a bricks and mortar business. Forget about the stock market. But those two businesses, you're lucky to get 10, 15% a year. Okay, the only way you get rich in a bricks and mortar business or the stock market is access to a ton of leverage, a ton of other people's money, and that means going into debt. You know, you want to get the Subway franchise, you got to borrow 100,000 from the bank, and then earn 10% on that. You know, and have these terrible margins. Service-based business, your margins are off the chart. Okay, there's almost no other business you can have that kind of margin.